Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Jackson. I live and I work here in Boston, and I'm responsible for market development for advanced microgrid solutions. AMS is a storage as a service provider, and we design, build, own, and operate, or design, build, transfer, and operate storage for our customers. Our customers are typically very large commercial, industrial, institutional, government companies that are operating large loads that we can turn into an asset for our utility customers. What we're doing with our utility customers is targeting hot spots on the grid where there's an opportunity to utilize storage behind the meter to create a cleaner, faster, more responsive, and more flexible grid along the lines of what we've been talking about all evening. Sorry about the voice. We're turning these loads into an asset for the grid, and the way that we do that is we create essentially a virtual power plant. We call them hybrid electric buildings, and the hybrid electric buildings sit along the key circuits and the areas where there's constraint or maybe an influx of renewables and other areas where storage can pair up with that resource and provide a resource for the utility, and also provide our customers on the commercial side, our host customers, with an opportunity to lower their cost of energy and essentially have a cleaner source of energy with the storage. The last piece that I'll discuss is the enabling platform. AMS marshals fleets of hybrid electric buildings in order to solve grid-level aspects and the grid-level concerns of the electric utility. It's really working, and it's working quite well for us and for our utility and commercial and industrial partners. AMS has 120 megawatts and 500 megawatt hours of capacity under contract now. We're deploying this across hundreds of buildings in the utility territory where they're focused, and our business development folks out in the field are bringing in more and more host customers that want to participate. With this approach, we essentially make those host customers a stakeholder in a new clean grid. I hope to talk to you upstairs at the technology showcase, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and present to the group. Thank you very much.
I'm here plugging a mitigation strategy, and that specifically is community solar. I'm not actually going to talk too much about my company, but I'm here to talk about community solar because we think it's a really meaningful way to reduce everybody's carbon footprint. So we have this image up here, and this, for those of us that are interested in science, we all see the value right here of solar versus traditional grid power. And everybody should be able to see that what we're seeking ideally is on the left, a clean power source being consumed by everybody across the country and being owned and operated by all sorts of different entities across the country. Unfortunately, right now, we're not quite there, but I'm here to talk about the fact that community solar has been available in Massachusetts now for a couple years, and it is being launched in New York in the next couple months. It's also available in Minnesota, and we're expecting to see community solar all across the country over the next several years, primarily because it's starting to work, it's starting to save people money, and it's making a real difference to a wide swath of communities in states where it's available. My name is Nate Owen. I'm the CEO of Ampion, and we provide a cloud-based platform that connects energy consumers with renewable energy developers and owners. So imagine a solar array, let's say a 5 megawatt array in a farm. We provide the systems necessary to take the data off of that system, what it's producing, and manage all of the customer engagement, billing and payment, and financials necessary to make the actual program work. So our system is servicing customers in Massachusetts, customers of all ilk, from low-income customers to low-income housing authorities across Massachusetts, to everyday residential customers, and many commercial, small commercial, and industrial customers. This thing is literally sweeping the country, and as soon as we can get some of the regulatory barriers out of the way and some of the interconnection and technical challenges out of the way, you're going to be seeing this offered all over the place. So, our company, Ampion, believes strongly that this is a very significant thing that every one of us can do. Every one of us can go home tonight, look online for a community solar provider in Massachusetts, take 15 to 20 minutes to sign up and offset your carbon footprint from your electricity consumption in this state. Now, if you're in certain areas of the state, you may not be able to get it yet because perhaps enough sites haven't been interconnected, but this is available right now in every service territory in Massachusetts, and everybody who has a utility account and pays a utility bill can sign up for this right now. And chances are, our systems will be processing some of the credit, the bills, the monitoring the performance of the assets that you're subscribing to, and a bunch of different things that are required for a utility back office to perform. So this is the basic model for community solar. It's as simple as this. A developer installs panels. They're usually ground mounted in a field, but they can be on a roof, a very large rooftop. Anywhere you can install a large amount of panels. The energy that's produced is put on the utility's grid. The utility then credits individual subscribers, credits them with the amount of money that has been essentially put on by their share of the site's production. So you can offset the entirety of your electricity bill by subscribing to one of these programs. So this is the essential model, and it's very important to understand that because one of the most significant challenge we face in the community solar world is customer awareness. Can I see a share of hands? How many people have heard of community solar? Great. How many people are subscribers or a customer? Good. That's actually pretty decent. But customer awareness is our biggest issue. And the reason I'm here is to implore every single one of you to start actively looking for someone who can provide this type of service to you. We work with local developers, small towns that are operating all throughout Massachusetts, New York, Minnesota, Colorado, California. These are little businesses that are hiring people, they're installing these generation sources in their local communities, they're creating jobs, they're creating expertise, and they're creating reliable sources of energy located close to load and not requiring thousands of miles of transmission lines and gas pipelines across our country.
Thanks, Nate. Got to stop you there.
Oh,
sorry.
All right, so one benefit. Everybody can use this. Low-income customers, okay? This is the first time, in my experience in the energy industry, that low-income customers are actually saving money by buying clean energy. They can't put it on the rooftops. They don't usually own the rooftop. So this is a really important, this is the first time that low-income customers have actually been able to purchase renewable energy in the free market. That says a lot. This is a very meaningful movement, and I encourage you all to go home and do some research and sign up, please.
So the effect of rising carbon dioxide concentrations sort of on global climate has been well discussed here, and I think Professor Sturman gave a good introduction about the doom associated with it. But more importantly, recently the UN IPCC, the U.S. National Academies, and the Paris Accord has mandated direct extraction of carbon from the atmosphere as a necessary solution to avoid climate catastrophe. But I think that everybody in this room is sort of well aware of CO2 as a climate liability. But what's not often acknowledged is how valuable CO2 is as an asset. As a commodity chemical, CO2 is a $60 billion global market in legacy industries such as beverage carbonation, dry ice production, greenhouse agriculture, and even the treatment of desalinated water. But CO2's market price is dominated by transportation costs. So as significant location discrepancies exist between isolated, centralized CO2 supply and distributed CO2 demand, as an example shown here is a graph of the United States, shows the average distance from a large-scale CO2 industrial source. And you can see that the majority of the US is more than 300 miles away from a large CO2 source, including the entirety of the eastern seaboard. And so this is really where we step in. So Global Thermostat has developed a technology that can capture CO2 directly from the air at 400 parts per million and produce a 99% pure CO2 stream. And since air is everywhere, we can install our direct air capture modules at the point of use. It limits the prohibitive transportation infrastructure in its entirety. It's a proven technology. We've demonstrated this at large scale. There's a 1,000 metric ton per year carbon capture plant in Menlo Park, California that we operate, and our mild temperatures of operation really enable nice integration into existing processes and downstream utilization, which both decrease our cost and our energy footprint. Our design is modular to scale with demand and can produce CO2 cheaper than current market prices, importantly, without the need for carbon tax, credit, or subsidy. And since we take the CO2 directly from the air, we're not low carbon, we're not zero carbon, we're carbon negative. Coupling this type of carbon capture with emerging developments in renewable energy, synthetic fuels, materials such as carbon fiber and plastic, really it allows us humans to short-circuit the natural carbon cycle. And with scaled deployment of direct air capture, coupled with some of these utilization technologies, we have the ability to actually reduce the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. So on-site, on-demand, carbon-negative CO2 anywhere in the world is possible with Global Thermostat's direct air capture technology. And if you'd like to know more, my colleague and I will be upstairs and available to chat during the reception. Thank you.
30% of greenhouse gases are made by the electricity sector, and there is no local map of the distribution infrastructure in our country. It's like driving into a new city that you've never been to without your smartphone. You don't know where to go. The market that's installing distributed energy doesn't know the local infrastructure that exists. There's a great opportunity to provide a smart map of the local infrastructure. It's not just any map. It's a geospatial database that shows where things are producing and consuming electricity and the opportunity of deploying additional distributed energy at that location. Regulators, policymakers know investing in distributed energy is a good thing. Let's catch up to where I am. They know it's a good thing, but they don't know it helps the system and it reduces costs, and you can start to measure other externalities like sea level rise. But they don't know where it is. They don't know how to do the assessment, what the value is of distributed energy to the system. The data is everywhere, and it's not aggregated or correlated in one place, and the policymakers don't generally have the expertise to do that, or MIT to do it for the country. Most of the entities that do have this information are not willing to share it. So what we've done is we've created a SaaS platform to bring all this information about the local infrastructure together in one place. It's about a $200 million a year market. Our beachhead customers are commercial and utility solar developers. They spend hours and hours looking for customers and projects only to find out months later that the interconnection costs are tens or thousands of dollars. We provide them an affordable annual subscription that they can get an assessment of their technology or at a point location, and we give them sort of the guidebook to find the highest value project with the lowest costs. We take that same assessment and we roll it up into a polygon to provide a planning tool to regulators and utilities who are trying to understand how the market is evolving, how much solar potential there is, where is solar trending, so that when they're looking at capital expense proposals or rate changes, they can make sure that ratepayers recover the cost of those investments. Our competition are generally consultants using static tools or doing power flow analysis at a point in time, while we're doing a widespread algorithmic approach using public data to really track how this system of systems is changing. And the great news is we're getting feedback from the market that's strong. We're partnering with BMW on an EV pilot program where we're answering the question, is there more value if I charge now where I am or later where I'm going? We're involved in a Hawaii incubator program to start mapping scenarios to get to 100% RPS. We've got almost $2 million from the Department of Energy to map out all these polls, people, and pricing across the country. And the best news is we've got customers who are benefiting from this technology today. And I think they say it best when they say, you take a sea of opportunity and focus it. We're a veteran team with deep domain expertise, and we have this fundamental belief that through transparency and technology, we can accelerate our clean energy future, and we'll hope you come join us and talk to us upstairs.
So today I'm here to talk about water efficiency analysis, and I'm sure you're all familiar with the drought that ravaged California and a lot of the western United States over the past several years. We saw a historically dry year this year in Massachusetts. And when OmniEarth began working in water in California in 2014, water agencies were being required to drastically cut back on the amount of water that they were using. The problem was that no one knew where and when water was being used appropriately versus when it was being wasted. So water agencies were putting into place regulations and funding conservation programs with really very little insight as to their potential effectiveness. For instance, one large agency in California started a turf rebate program, and they had no idea how much turf was in their service area. They also had no idea whether removing that turf was a better water conservation measure than simply having homeowners water that same grass more efficiently. The program ballooned to a $500 million program, and the kicker is they still don't know how much water they saved. So, as it turned out, this was the perfect climate to introduce efficiency analysis. Now, OmniEarth set out to answer the question that nobody else was asking, not how much water do we have, but how much water are we capable of saving if everyone is efficient? And when and where can water agencies find those savings? So OmniEarth is a data analytics company dedicated to providing businesses with physically verifiable data, oftentimes garnered through remote sensing. Today, we're the only provider of automated water budgeting and efficiency analysis in the water industry, and the cornerstone of that work is high-resolution aerial imagery, from which OmniEarth derives land cover classifications. So we classify features on each property, including irrigated turf, impervious surface, pools, and vegetation. In a patented process, OmniEarth then incorporates weather, slope, evapotranspiration data, and census information in order to create a water budget or ideal usage for each property. This allows us to assess whether each of these individual parcels uses more or less than the ideal amount of water. And inefficient users, like the guys up here in red, are immediately highlighted and identified as consumers with potential to save water. Now, actually, one of these inefficient users is a general manager at a water agency in California. He had obviously fitted his home to be highly efficient and was really shocked that his house showed up in red in our system, thought our data was no good, but actually discovered that he had a leak under his driveway that had gone unnoticed and put him over his water budget. So his district cut back on outreach. They only messaged inefficient users with the greatest potential to save water. So this individualized approach not only was more relevant to the consumer, it saved more water, but it cut their costs as well. Now, OmniEarth processes all of this data at the parcel level, but surveying across large spaces and accommodating variation in geography, slope, climate, demographics is really challenging. The satellite and aerial data that we use for the state of California is 120 terabytes per year alone. By using machine learning and tools like IBM Watson, OmniEarth not only understands the regional context of every aerial image and every parcel in that image, but we can track changes over time and do so at scale. And it's that scalability and scientific accuracy that our utilities need to be able to adapt to an uncertain climate future. Thank you.
So earlier, this is a graph of our power usage in New England on Monday. But earlier today, it looked pretty much the same. And as we were giving the introduction here, is when we hit our peak power usage of the day. And that topped out at, when anybody want to guess? 75% of the grid's capacity, 90%, any takers? Oh, we got a closer one here, but he's in the business. So it topped out just at 50% for a few minutes. And what that means is we've got humankind's greatest engineering marvel here sized for the worst day. And not the worst day of this year, or this season, or August 12th, but the worst day of not the next decade, but the next 2 decades. And what that leads to is inefficiency. So if we're operating this system at about 50% capacity, and we're operating it only for a few hours a day, and the distribution system downstream is even less is even more lightly loaded, then in Massachusetts alone, the state of charge study from DOER says we spend about $680 million on our top 1% of power. Over a decade, that's 1 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent. I think that's 1,000 pilot plants from the guys before me. We solve this by integrating lithium-ion batteries. We do everything from the small scale to large multi-megawatt containers, either source or buy. We then network them together, utilizing all those wonderful buzzwords of big data, machine learning, and the Internet of Things. And we roll them out to our customers. Our customers are those 2,980, I'm told to say about 3,000, municipal utilities and co-ops, everyone from Belmont to Los Angeles Water and Power Department. And as Mary Rose Velster mentioned, the 6 million commercial buildings that want to change CapEx into OpEx, or just pay a lower utility bill. So we give them a way to do that. We do that with something that looks familiar to them. It's called a demand charge. So we charge them a demand charge in dollars per kilowatt month. And that allows the people in South Boston to compare their summertime $28 per kilowatt month with $10 a kilowatt month or thereabouts and say, well, that's cheaper, cleaner, and more reliable. Let's do that and see where we go from there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Holly Bostrom. I'm the Director of Climate Smart Cities at the Trust for Public Land. Our vision at the Trust for Public Land is to put every resident within a 10-minute walk of a park, natural space, or open space. And through the Climate Smart Cities program, we work with communities and neighborhood organizations to help them think about how they can maximize their parks and open space investments for climate mitigation and adaptation benefits. And so we look at 4 different components of this: connect, cool, absorb, and protect. Connect is really focused on active transportation investments, so helping communities think about safer bikeways, how we can get people out of their cars, walking and biking, both to reduce carbon emissions, but also to increase public health. We look at urban heat islands, so how climate is going to change, how many days over 90 degrees we have, and how we can use vegetative cover and green space to help mitigate that. We also look at stormwater management, so looking at how we can use green space to help mitigate those heavy rainfalls we experience here in the Northeast, but also perhaps help mitigate the drought that California is experiencing. And then finally, for protect, we look at coastal flood risk and sea level rise as well, and so thinking about how we can use open space to buffer communities from that. I'm just going to highlight 2 components related to the technology applications that we use in our program. We work with communities to develop research agendas, develop web-based decision support tools to help prioritize the parcels that they can site multiple benefit green infrastructure on, and then work with them to implement those strategies. And so what you see here is what we call a bubble diagram from one of our assessments, and we really dig deep with our partners to understand their current decision-making systems, their funding streams, specifically what drives the implementation of the work that they're doing, so we can tailor our technology applications to meet their needs. And so you can imagine these needs vary from city to city and from community to community. Our technical tools include site analysis, data exploration, as well as site selection. And so we combine publicly available data to identify the high priority areas for each of those goals of connect, cool, absorb, and protect. We do that at the city scale, so you can look at for high priority neighborhoods. We also tag all that information down to the parcel level. And so this information can both be used by decision makers at the city scale to help inform strategies that are looking at subsections of the city, but can also be really informative for community-based organizations and neighborhood organizations and residents to be informed about where they live and the potential investments that could be made. We've been working with the City of Boston and the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, their Metro Mayors Coalition group, to develop these decision support tools for the region, and they are available online. So I look forward to speaking with you after. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly.